Beliefs are not truth either. Let's talk about the invisible defaults behind the stories under your emotions. How beliefs, language, and emotional granularity shape what your brain constructs. In my previous article, I shared a line that many people find both revealing and unsettling. An emotion is not a fact about the world. It's a meaning your brain is constructing. If you've ever thought, okay, I get it, so why do I still react the same way? You're not alone. Because even when we understand that emotions aren't truth, we can still find ourselves having the same emotional spikes again and again in meetings, in friendships, at school gates, in job interviews, or even in the quiet moments when you're scrolling and comparing. That's usually a sign there's a deeper chapter underneath the one we can see. The last article was about the moments you notice, the hesitation, the overthinking, the second guessing. This one is about what those moments are usually protecting, a belief you learned somewhere along the way. Beliefs, or the invisible defaults under your emotions. Beliefs are often invisible defaults. They sit under the surface of your day like an operating system. They quietly shape what you pay attention to, what you interpret as danger or proof, and what your brain predicts will happen next. And to be clear, we all need beliefs. Without them, we'd have to consciously evaluate every single situation from scratch. Beliefs help your brain conserve energy, make quick meaning, and decide what to do next. So the issue isn't that you have beliefs. The issue is that some of your defaults were built in a different context, and they may no longer be helpful in the life you're living now. So where do beliefs come from, and why do they feel like facts? Most beliefs don't arrive as formal statements. They form gradually through repetition. They're shaped by things like early experiences, meaning what was rewarded, what was criticized, what felt safe, or family and cultural norms, both spoken and unspoken rules. Your school and work environments, how success was defined and what did mistakes mean then? As well as identity and belonging, what you learned you needed to do to be accepted. And finally, also like in situations where there were stressful or high-stake moments, when your brain links a feeling with a conclusion. Over time, a belief can start to feel reality. Not because it's objectively true, but because it's familiar, and because your brain has used it as a reliable shortcut before. So let's just take a quick science note and remember that emotions are constructed, not discovered. In the book How Emotions Are Made, neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett argues that emotions are constructed by the brain. And so your brain uses sensations in your body, the context you're in, and the concepts you've learned to make a best guess of what's going on and what you should do next. That means that your emotional experience is not a simple readout of the world, it's an interpretation. And here's where beliefs matter. Beliefs influence the interpretation your brain is most likely to make. If the default belief is it's not safe to make mistakes here, then your brain is more likely to construct anxiety in situations that involve visibility. Or if the belief is I'm behind, then your brain is more likely to construct shame in situations that involve comparison. So here's something about concepts, language, and why living across cultures can amplify everything. Barrett also highlights the role of concepts, that is, the categories your brain uses to make sense of sensations and context. So concepts are learned. They're shaped by experience, culture, and crucially, language as well. So when you live across cultures and often across languages, you're not only adapting to new norms, you may also be adapting to a new emotional vocabulary, which can subtly change what your brain constructs in the first place. Now, sometimes the shift looks like, I'm using different words for the same inner experience. or noticing that one language has more precise labels for certain feelings. Maybe it's realizing you've been labeling a whole range of sensations as stress because it's the closest concept you have available. So let's shift to emotional granularity and learning more about precise concepts for what you feel. So there's a term for building a more nuanced emotional vocabulary: emotional granularity. In simple terms, it means getting better at distinguishing between similar feeling states. For example, irritation versus disappointment versus overwhelm, rather than just putting everything into one bucket like anxiety or stress. Why does it matter? Well, when you have more precise concepts available, your brain can make more precise predictions, and you often get more choice in how you respond. So if you've read my article where I talk about the feelings wheel, you'll recognize this as one of the practical reasons that tool can be so helpful. Now, there are three common invisible defaults, at least, that I see in international professionals. So below are a few beliefs that show up often in my work with expats, international leaders. Notice what happens in your body as you read them. Not to judge yourself, but just to gather information. So number one is that I have to prove myself twice. This belief often shows up as over-preparing, people-pleasing, or a constant sense that you're one mistake away from being found out. I've been there myself. So it can sound something like, oh, I need to be extra competent because I'm not from here. And if I ask a question, they'll think I shouldn't be in this role. So it can really cost you a lot of chronic tension, reluctance to take healthy risks, and just difficulty receiving recognition. A second one is about, hey, if it's not hard, it doesn't count. This one is sneaky because it can look like ambition. So in practice, it can sound like, hey, if I'm not struggling, I'm not growing. Or rest is for when I've earned it. But reality is that it can cost you burnout disguised as drive, or guilt when things actually go well, as well as a life that feels in constant effort. And finally, the third element that I hear often is that, wait, I should be grateful, so I shouldn't want more. Now, this belief is especially common among expats who know they're privileged in some ways and feel conflicted about naming what is missing. So it can sound like, hey, I chose this, so I don't get to complain. Or, well, other people have it worse. So then in practice, it will probably cost you in terms of emotional loneliness, staying in situations that don't fit, and silencing your own needs. So here's how beliefs and concepts work together and a simple model to understand it. Here's a helpful way to think about it. One, what's the situation? For example, maybe there's an opportunity to speak up in a meeting. Then check your belief. Number two, oh, maybe if I'm not perfect, I'll lose credibility. So three, what are the concepts available linked to this situation? And maybe danger, risk, or exposure pop up. Maybe it's something more like learning or participation or growth. It really depends. So if it's the first type of concepts, and your prediction might be, ooh, speaking up here, this is going to be risky. And therefore, the emotion constructed is probably around anxiety, shame, tension. So in the end, what is your behavior? You over-explain, you soften, or actually you just stay quiet the next time. So your emotion isn't random. Your brain's doing its job based on the data that it's been given. So the question becomes, is the belief undermining all of this still accurate, or is it simply familiar? So let's update beliefs without self-blame. Now, beliefs don't change through force or even sheer will. They change through awareness, evidence, and repetition. A gentle starting point is to work in two directions at once. Upstream, meaning identify the belief that's shaping the prediction, but also in the moment, Expanding your concepts, meaning increasing the granularity, so your brain has more options than the default label. Over time, this is how invisible defaults become visible and then adjustable. So let me offer you a kinder conclusion. If you recognize yourself in this, take a breath. You're not too sensitive or not resilient enough. You're human, and your brain is doing what brains do. The good news is that, well, defaults can be updated. If you're curious to explore further support, hey, let's have a discovery call.